Welcome back to the Innovation Series. I'm joined here today by Adrian Hicks, the Director of Channel 28. Adrian, thanks for being with us.
Nice to talk to you.
I think there's been a lot of technological developments across almost all aspects of the superyachting industry, especially in the last 5 or 10 years. But the radio communications on board, perhaps hasn't really caught pace with some of those other developments.
No, I mean we found that radio is a very very simple technology, and it's a thing that every crew should have. And we certainly, when we looked at it, when we set the business up 8 years ago, we were just looking at the technology that was in use. And the one thing you found is most of the times you could sit on T with a $20 scanner and listen to pretty much everybody's crew communications, and yet you go on board and everybody's talking about security, and you could almost go back and say that we know what your owner's doing, we know where they've been, we know what they're doing, we know what time they're arriving because we can listen to your comms. So we were looking at the technology that was around, and we basically started introducing that into the industry. Digital technology allows a lot of encryption, but also allows so many more clever things to do, and we've made great marches into that, and but there's always more we can do. And I think for us, we then took it. Oh, sorry.
For the sake of our viewers, traditional onboard inter-crew communication in particular, there's only a handful of channels that they could possibly be on. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, typically, there's legally there's 10 channels that people can use, 10 frequencies that people can use. So typically, most people are going to be on those frequencies, and in the old analog days, they're just broadcasting with typically no encryption, no scrambling at all. And the other thing with that is it was very hard for crews when crews are busy, and you end up with the deck crew and the interiors crew, especially with guests on. Ideally, they want to be separated out. They want to be working on different channels, and that was a hard thing to do with analog. Whereas with digital, the engineers can be doing engineering stuff, the interiors can be doing, covering the guest needs, whereas the decks can be docking the boat, and they can all be running completely independently. But what we found is then the captain needs the ability to suddenly go, guys, there's an issue, and the captain can come and priority call everybody and talk to them.
Yeah, because when you need it, you need to be able to get a really clear message across really quickly, because things change in an instant.
And it's all about, and we, since what we've done with our system is then take all the other things you can go with digital technology, and we've added a load of functionality like steward calling, and engineering alarms. But it still comes back to the basics. The basics are, the crew need to be able to get the message across.
Yeah, and you have all of the crew with this piece of technology on them. Why not give them more information that they're able to communicate in a clear way, as opposed to just the walkie-talkie function that most people are used to?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, we're engineers, so we came up from an engineering standpoint. We went, oh, it wouldn't be good if, and that's great. And you go, we can do this, we can add this, we can add this. And a lot of the input then comes from the clients, who then say, oh, well, that'd be great, but I want to be able to take the call from the passerelle. So when I'm on watch, somebody comes to the passerelle at 10 o'clock at night, I can answer that on my radio when I'm in my cabin. But I think the only thing for us is that very simple thing, though. All this technology is great, but it's got to be easy to use, and you can't take away from the simple function of communication.
Yeah, so it's about the crew's connectivity with one another, but then also elements like the passerelle call can kind of just streamline the whole operation on board.
Absolutely. And so we came up with originally the idea of steward calls for the interiors crew, engineering alarms. Now, the engineering alarm is a good example. You don't necessarily have to have it on your radio, but as what we tend to find is the engineers will leave that facility on. They'll get a quick message on their radio, and even if they're off the boat, as chief engineer once put it to me, he knows whether he can finish his beer or whether he's got to run back to the boat. It's a case of just having simple information delivered to you in a simple way, but not too much information.
But you mentioned that you and your team are engineers, so I feel like you come up with a really cool idea, but then it sounds like you're getting the input from the customers, from the clients, from the crew, pointing out all these additional features, and then you guys are figuring out how to incorporate it.
Absolutely. And the thing with it is some of those we try and incorporate. We're a small team. We do our own software in house, so we can make changes and incorporate changes very quickly. And the one thing we find is every boat, although they're all big, white and shiny, every boat, every captain, every crew works in a different way. So you turn up with a solution and they say, that's good, but actually I want to do this. And I think our strength has been the ability to be very flexible in terms of changing what we do. Not all ideas are great ideas. And sometimes you've got to, you've basically got to give it a go and see what it says. But, but it's also knowing the way to say, that's a great idea, but actually we think we can do it slightly differently. But it's got to be led by our crews, our clients.
Well, you've got the technical platform, and then you can kind of roll with the recommendations that are coming in and future proof what's coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can deliver a little bit of knowledge about what the latest technology, and some ideas work, some ideas don't work. And this year we've had probably a bit more chance because we've been in lockdown to try a few different technologies, and to some of them have been really successful, and some of them we've said, let's walk away from it. I mean, a good example
part of the innovation.
Yeah.
So that's part of the innovation process. Really, is also figuring out what doesn't work, and having the time now is a really good time to test some of these ideas.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the products that really worked for us about 3 years ago at Monaco, somebody from an interiors department of a large management company said, what we want is a simple to use, inexpensive crew call, steward call button. And so we went away, and a year later we came back with our Morse buttons, and they've been very successful. This year, the technology for things like I think the Internet of Things technology has come on. So we've just reworked that and reworked that with a newer chip. It's faster, and it just works out a little bit better.
And there's also the security element as well of having that encryption, and it's a soft power entry to the vessel that can be removed, quite safely and quite efficiently.
Absolutely. So everything we do is looking at making sure we deliver good communications, but it's not going to be something you can sit on the dock and listen and find out what the owner's doing.
Yeah, I think that's an often overlooked aspect of the security. It's not just about a physical presence on board. It's got to be thinking a bit more abstractly as to who is actually getting on board.
And literally, 8 years on since we started the business, we still go on board and say, by the way, I can tell you this. And there's still that look from a captain who he spent thousands on all these security measures, and yet you say, I can tell you, you've just what your owner's doing because your crew comms is unencrypted.
That's shocking, but also quite reassuring that the technology base is there to kind of overcome such a glaring hole in the security system.
Yeah, and I think the message has got across, and it's a lot better now. But you still encounter very, very glaring holes in people's comms.
That's it's really interesting. Well, we're really interested to see what happens next in the realm of secure radio communications on board. And yeah, thank you very much for being with us on the innovation series.
No problem. Thanks for that.